This conference will now be recorded.
And again, I want to thank you all for joining us today. It was our intention when we set up this Northstar Pointer series that it would just be an opportunity for folks to learn from each other, because there is a wide variety of different ways that Northstar can be implemented in each library, and it really is up to you and your community. But I hope in talking with colleagues and hearing from colleagues and listening to colleagues, we will get some great ideas going, and you'll find something that you can latch onto that makes sense for your library and your community. I I'm Christine Morris at Oakland, and joining us today is Becky from Cuyahoga County Public Library. And I just want to let you know that we had expected a very large crowd today, but we have kind of a more intimate group. So the general format is I'm going to be asking Becky a few questions to get her to tell us a little bit about how Northstar has been working in their library. And I think what we might do, as long as we keep a fairly intimate number, is if you have a question, you can either write it in chat and I will share that as the timing and pacing permits. Or if you just want to ask Becky a question directly, you can write in the chat, I have a question, and then we'll make sure that you unmute so that you can really be in conversation. And Gosh, I think that's kind of the ground rules. Again, I've got a few questions to get things going, but we're really hoping to have a good bit of time for you to interact with Becky and share ideas together. So with that, Becky, did you want to give an introduction to yourself and to your library?
Sure. Okay. So I'm Becky Rinaldo. I'm the Literacy and Learning Director at the Cuyahoga County Public Library. That means I'm the director of all of our programming from birth through older adults. But in particular today, we're going to talk about our role around digital equity and as with our trainers. This area, though it has gotten smaller and a little bit less under my area as I've grown within CCPL, this role has really been my life's work within librarianship. I have been, since I came out of library school, I've worked around digital equity, first at Tri-C, and then I actually brought our training program here to CCPL. This area is just something I'm really passionate about, and I haven't given up all of it or all of the responsibility for it, because it's just an area where, I think I'm always going to have an opinion and want to see us drive kind of what we do here in Cuyahoga County. Christine, you're muted.
Very good.
There we go.
Thank you for Don. And yeah, if folks want to, do the little, yeah.
Yeah.
So just turned off the slide sharing. Thanks for rolling with me on this first one here. So softball question for you. How has your library integrated Northstar into your service flow?
Sure. No problem. So CCPL has had training, so some sort of technology training and trainers on staff since 2005. Well, we started with training in 2005. I was actually still at Tri-C at the time. But coordinating training for the system from there. And then I moved over to working at CCPL in 2006. And at that point, within that year, I hired my first technology trainer. Now, I'm going to note up front for all of you out there who are like, oh my gosh, they have technology trainers on staff. I recognize that that is kind of a luxury, not only in Ohio libraries, but in libraries as a whole. In fact, I tell my staff this all the time, that it is a luxury that we have these positions. And I will note throughout this conversation areas where, I think this applies, whether it's a staff trainer or volunteers or however you're making it work. So we have slowly grown over time. So since that first trainer was hired in 2006, we've grown to 3 full-time staff. I now have 3 full-time staff, a coordinator for my training program, and 3 part-time digital navigators. Most of that either began as grant funded or, has the digital navigators are certainly grant funded now. And we've kind of varied in numbers throughout time, but with this current push on digital equity and the importance, we're in a really solid place, and I'm grateful for that. So that out front. In 2017, though, we first looked at Northstar and thought about purchasing it. And for us, it really seemed like it might be an answer. One of the consistent questions we got over time from customers was, can you sign something to tell my boss that I know how to do, Word, or I know how to do email? And we spent some time looking for an option, and to us, Northstar looked really good. It was fairly inexpensive for something we could buy on our own, but also gave us the opportunity to do something more. Up until that point, we had a Word document that we would give customers when they asked that question, and we would basically check off that they attended a class. And so all it said was, you've been here. But we really did want an opportunity for our customers to be able to show that they were proficient. And so in 2017, we purchased Northstar, and I think it was $500 at the time. And we wanted to be able to look at our own statistics. So that's why we actually went with the purchased option. You could do it for free, much like you can now with Oakland, out of the generosity of Oakland. So for us, though, that meant taking a curriculum we had that already existed, and know that at that time, Northstar didn't have a curriculum that went with their modules. So we actually took our curriculum for our basics classes and spent a couple of months and made it match up to what the assessments are. And that was the biggest piece for us and the biggest change. Was really taking what we were teaching and kind of deciding we completely changed our flow of classes, because there were certain things that we were teaching in Word Basics that didn't really appear on the assessment. And so, we shifted those to a different version, to Word 2 or Word tables or whatever it was we were teaching, just to make sure that we were covering everything that fell within the Northstar assessments. We, modified our class structure then according to that too, and maybe things that were, for instance, one of the biggest changes for our branches was that before this time we'd offered, when our trainers went out to a branch to train, they would offer 2 classes in a day. So they'd offer a morning class and an afternoon class. Well, Northstar changed our timing of classes a little bit. So now we were offering 1 class during the day, and it would be 3 hours instead of 2 hours. And that 3-hour shift was to ensure that we could cover the material, but then give customers time to take the assessment, and also time to go over the answers with customers who wanted to stay, who maybe didn't pass, and who just wanted to know what they needed to work on for the future. So that was a change for us. And this was a big change. I should note here, part of our success as a training program has been that we've been doing it for so long. And so our staff know that we're offering training. They know that pre-COVID, we offered it in 14 locations. They knew how to register people. Like all of that, our staff were really used to. And so we were very successful at getting customers into our classes. And any shift like that makes us a little bit nervous at first. We didn't know if customers would really take the assessments. And we also were a little bit worried about changing the structure so that our staff, were still comfortable with when classes were being offered and how they could funnel customers into them. In addition to those pieces and how we implemented it here, we also have a link to Northstar on our website, and customers can go there and practice the test if they want. And we also use it as an example. In the past, we fielded a lot of questions from either customers or staff about, well, I want to take Excel too, but how do I know if I'm ready? And so now we can send them to Northstar and have them take an assessment and see. And if they pass, then they can, pop into Excel too without worrying too much about being behind. We also are a hub. Cuyahoga County Public Library is a hub for an Aspire program here in the state, and that's high school equivalency testing or ESOL work. And they use Northstar as their base digital literacy test for their students who come in too. And so we are kind of in, all in agreement across the organization that this is the way that we, anytime we need to test someone's proficiency for a program, and really, Aspire is the only one that's doing some sort of testing for someone to come in and to see if they're proficient or enough. But whether, any area where we might want to have someone test their digital literacy, Northstar is what we use in that link from our website.
Cool. So what I'm hearing is it has given you an opportunity to give certification where the library might not have been able to do that for a variety of reasons before, and that made your lives easier. And it gave you a chance to review your curriculum and something to review against, and not just your own homemade stuff, as wonderful as I'm sure that was. And it gave you a place to start a conversation with a patron of where do I start? Where does a patron place themselves in your training curriculum? And the other takeaway I got from that is, I know county has 28, probably more than that, locations, and you're really using this at 14. So I mean,
Right.
in the pre-COVID time. So
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be at all of your locations. It can be something that if you're in a multi library system, you can emphasize at some of your locations and put your resources in specific baskets for that.
Yeah,
Cool.
correct. In terms of that, it also gave us an opportunity pre-COVID to, we made our handouts from class available. So if someone wanted to take those handouts and try and do the assessment on their own, they could. And since we didn't have any virtual programming of the sort, if you couldn't make it to class, that was always an option. And so it was our kind of prepackaged learning before we were trying to package learning in that way.
Neat. So you touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to ask you to maybe go a few layers deeper. What do you really like about Northstar?
So there's a couple of pieces we really like about Northstar. One is obviously that we can meet that need and give customers a chance to assess their learning. We love data. Prior to Northstar, and still we have what is just a monster of a spreadsheet now, over 17 years of training, that shows, everything, every class we've offered, where we offered it, the time we offered it, what it was, how many people we had. And we use that regularly to see where we're most effective, because we are at 14 of 27 locations. And we want to be able to show that every one of those, all 27 locations, would have training in some way if they could. And so we really feel like we need to be able to show that we're being the most effective that we can, that we're providing the biggest impact we can. We constantly get questions about more night classes or Saturday classes, and our data shows us that they're not as effective. We don't get as many people, no matter where we offer them and how we offer them. So that's something that we use too. Northstar gives us a ton of information, and part of it is, the biggest part of it, I would say, is how effective is our curriculum. So we've been able to show that people are showing up in our classes, but that's really not enough. And if anyone has tried to go for funding around any area, what funders really want to see is the impact you're having, not just numbers of people who are there, but are they really learning? And Northstar gives us the ability to show that people are passing assessments. It also gives us internally a sense that our curriculum is working. Anecdotally, we thought it was before, but now we can look at those Northstar assessments and know, yes, it's working. Consistently from the beginning, we've seen between a 75 and 80 pass rate in our classes. And that has stayed consistent throughout all the time that we were giving the Northstar assessment and offering classes. COVID has obviously thrown that all off the books, but for the time being, for that time, we knew our curriculum was effective. And we also could look at it and say, we have a lot of people missing question number 9. And so the way that we are addressing whatever that topic is in our curriculum is something that we should probably look at, because we can see that we have customers who are really struggling with that concept, or struggling with the way that we frame it and the way that it's tested. For us, and we have a union shop here, so my trainers are all union employees, and I want to stress that what we're looking at too is the effectiveness of the curriculum, not the effectiveness of the teacher. That was a question I had to answer ahead of time, and some of you may also have to answer it, and so I like to throw it in here, but I really had to sit down with our union and say, look, this is what we want to do. And at no point am I going to ever say, Mike, you have 75% of your class passing, but Elaine looks like she's only got 50%. And so that's a problem, because for us, it's not about the trainer, it's about the training and what we're offering and how we're approaching it. But this has really given us the opportunity then to look at that and see where, where people are struggling and where we might be able to be clearer in our materials. For us also, it's a sense of, one of the things we like about Northstar is that it is similar to other certification tests in that it wants a very specific way to do something. And that's one of the challenges, especially in teaching an office program. There are, 3 different ways to do everything, at least 3. And Northstar clues in on that one way. And so you really can teach the customers that it's about what you're being asked for in that question, not necessarily your favorite way to do it. I'm Gen X, so I really like to use my keyboard shortcuts. But not everybody does. Some people want to right click with their mouse or use the ribbon. And we've all got our ways of doing that. But it's also getting across that anytime you take an assessment or a certification test, it's going to ask for a very specific way to do that. And so it's giving some training on that piece too, without customers really knowing that.
Well, there are a lot of great things that you covered there. I'm also interested in, and you've talked about this a little bit too, about what your patrons like about Northstar. You talked a little bit about the certificates. You talked a little bit about the outcomes. So what are you hearing back from your patrons about the Northstar experience?
So definitely we're hearing that they're thrilled to be able to get that piece of paper to go back and say, I'm proficient, I can do this. And for us, we saw a big shift during that last recession. Initially we often, when we first started our training programs, we saw a lot of seniors. And we were only in 2 locations, and that could have been a factor of where we were. But as that last recession hit in 2008 and on, we started seeing way more people come from the workforce. And we also saw a lot of companies locally sending people to classes. And so this really gave us an opportunity to show the value of our training. And for customers to come back and say, I learned. And that's awesome, because that's why we're here. Like, that's the part that we really love to do. My trainers love to train, and everybody hears that, they love to see that aha moment. That's the phrase everyone uses where somebody gets it. Whether you're a trainer or, whether you're reference staff, when you're working with a customer and they just figured it out and they're like, oh, that's why. So this really allows them to show that they got it. For us too, though, and we've heard this from customers, it ensures some consistency of curriculum across locations. My trainers always taught from the same curriculum, and they all teach differently, and that's part of why I've hired them. Really, I want, I want anybody who learns differently to be able to find within my training pool somebody that they learn best from, and so I want them to train differently. But it ensures that we're all covering the same material. And for a while there, we had some branch staff offering basics classes in their own branches. And one of the things that really concerned us was that it was fairly inconsistent. And Northstar allows us to have one curriculum that's taught very specific things, that again, they can test against. And it also helps us provide better training. And I think our customers have seen that, they can see that we're consistently working on the places that we need to work on, not just kind of grasping at, well, we haven't updated this part of the curriculum for a while, so why don't we try upgrading that or updating that and see if it works.
So I think you talked about a lot of really great stuff there. One of the other questions I had is, um, how has Northstar helped your library serve your patrons better? And you've talked about that feedback and
Mm-hmm.
the aha moments, the feedback you're getting about sharing the value of your training. So what thing, what, how has having this resource, this specific resource, helped you to up your game?
Sure. Well, I mentioned consistency before, and I think that's been a big piece for us. Locally, we're a part of a collaboration between library systems. Um, and we really have worked to ensure that our curriculum is similar across topics, because we know that, especially in Cuyahoga County, where there are 9 library systems, that our customers flow back and forth. My daughter has 3 library cards, like for 3 different places. I might have more than that, actually, if I'm being honest. I think I have 4. So we all use different libraries, and we wanted to be sure that we were aware that our customers also do. And sometimes they can't make an Excel class, at Cleveland Public Library, so maybe they come to one of our locations. And so we've all shared curriculum between us. Many of us share Northstar, and a number of our smaller community organizations also utilize Northstar. And so for me, that means that even if someone's not comfortable in a library program yet, they're that concerned about their skills that they really just want to go to a community organization where they can get some one-on-one assistance first, that they're going to see some similar topics and similar curriculum. And if they learn about basics there, they could come to our email class or come to our internet class, and it's going to follow a similar format. For me, that's really important to know as our customers kind of flow between different locations, that consistent curriculum. And obviously I mentioned this before, but it's really important for us to be able to show our proficiency, especially with dollars on the table now. I mean, there's a huge amount of digital equity money right now. We've never seen this before, and it really does allow us to show that we're effective, because COVID has taught us and taught many people who weren't paying attention before that digital literacy and digital equity affects everything. It affects health literacy. It's a social determinant of health. It is, a piece of whether or not someone can work from home, or someone can even read on what, do they need to wear a mask somewhere, like their ability to find information. It's all become even more important than it was. It was always this important for us and for those of us who know, but it's become apparent to everyone now. And so this really has helped us advocate for our customers, and seek the funding that we need to continue to do this work. And it's been an opportunity to demonstrate that library training really works. Um, for us, we've been a part of a number of proposals lately, and we've been able to say, look, we see these numbers, we do this training, you guys are going for this digital equity money. And we want to be able to, we're going to do this training either way, basically. So why don't you include us in your proposal? Because what you really need is not just to connect somebody, but you need somebody to show them how to use that connection you've just given them. And while, yeah, we're doing the work, why don't you give us, why don't you include us in the funding here too, so that we can continue to do this work on the scale that we need to do it.
Yeah, one of the things that I have come to realize in becoming more proficient with digital equity is this talk of a three-legged stool. You've got
Mm-hmm.
your devices, you've got your internet connection, but you got to have the skills. And
Right.
the library is the place where that can really happen.
Yeah.
So it's great that you have those ways to demonstrate the proficiency that the library has in filling that need for funders.
Well,
So
and Christine, my staff see me up on my soapbox a lot here, or hear me up on my soapbox, but we're in a unique position as libraries. Our customers come to us when they don't know something and when they're at a disadvantage. They trust us to be the place that they come for that information. And so we are uniquely suited. Technology is intimidating. It's intimidating to me. There are things that I don't do. And I've worked in this realm for a long time and I'm very used to being uncomfortable. But there are things that I shy away from doing that are new and that we're learning. And the fact that our customers are willing to come to us and show that need and show their vulnerability here means that we are in a really unique position to be able to make an impact, particularly around digital equity, because we have long been that place that people come when they aren't connected. And COVID, threw us all. We closed our doors, and we had. I don't know what anyone else has seen in their libraries, but I know that from the time that we started monitoring it in April through when we reopened in June of 2020, we saw 70,000 Wi-Fi sessions logged from our parking lots. Um, and that number is both amazing and horrifying to me because I know that we had that many customers who were either not connected or underconnected, and the best way for them to get access was to sit in their cars in our parking lots. And so anything we can do to alleviate that going forward. I feel like we, at least CCPL, has a responsibility to do that.
right, right. Um, so here's a good question coming in through the chat. Does
Mm-hmm.
county keep a list of smaller and non-library organizations that use Northstar to give customers specialized and one-on-one training for those who want alternatives to the classes that you offer?
Right. So I mentioned that we have a digital equity coalition here, and we've actually had a group of connected organizations that do training of some sort for almost 20 years in the area. And we are aware of a lot of them. Now, the other thing, though, I think about, we joke about this when we're talking about STEM and organizations providing STEM. There's always somebody with robots in their basement, or is when it comes to technology training, there's always a church or a community organization with 4 computers in their basement that's offering some sort of training that we don't even know about. But for the most part, we're aware of that group and we're a part of that group locally, and we certainly have shared our curriculum with anybody who wanted it or who was really willing to take it. That's always something that we've been willing to help local organizations, because we found that that biggest first step is often just having a curriculum that you can work from.
Right.
So yes, sort of. We're a part of a group, and I know I saw Don just share a URL too for even more. I do feel like that group is always kind of growing though, and you never quite know. Like every meeting that I'm at of our local coalition, someone new shows up, or someone who hasn't been there for 3 years shows up because they're trying to do some of this work again.
So I was just, is this the Connecting Greater Cleveland group? Is that?
There's a digital equity coalition, but
Okay.
then there's Cleveland Digital Ambassadors. Honestly, Christine, that we've had 3 different names. The
Okay.
Digital Equity Coalition is now run by the Cleveland Foundation and some of the larger corporations locally, and there are a couple different arms of that. That's the group that's really trying to raise money locally here, though.
Okay.
But I would look at Cleveland Digital Ambassadors are the ones who, in our area right now, have our digital navigators on staff and who are just looking to make resources available.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm jotting this down. Cleveland Digital I can't even talk. Cleveland Digital Ambassadors.
We've also
Is that
changed our name too many times.
okay?
So it is somewhat, there are legacy sites and legacy groups around.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So my last question, and I'm
Mhm.
hoping that other folks have questions after I ask mine, because we've got lots of time to dig into them if you do. is how does the experience of your library relate to other libraries? And I think you touched on that too. You talked about your library being the place where people go when they don't know where else to go. And you talked about your library as a center for connectivity when there is not sufficient connectivity at home or wherever else they may be. So how else do you think your experience at CCPL relates to other folks who may be online with us today?
Sure. So, I mean, I think there are a couple benefits here in a couple ways that it does relate, other than the ones that you pointed out, Christine. Um, it's an opportunity. Using Northstar has been an opportunity to demonstrate that training works for us, and that's a piece that I think is important. It's important now, and it's going to become even more important um, as digital equity funding dries up post this. We are in a very flush funding time, but it doesn't mean that we're going to solve the digital equity problem. That we are still going to have people that struggle with that next thing. Um, and for some people, what we're always trying to teach with any of our customers is that process of learning something new and learning with technology. But depending on how you come with this and how much time you've spent with any sort of technology, um, that next piece, that next new thing you have to learn is going to be intimidating. And so, we're always going to have people that come back to us who need to learn that new thing. My mom is very comfortable on her iPhone, but she needed to talk to her anesthesiologist for a procedure she's having the other day. And she was like, well, I'm not going to do that virtually because the webcam on our computer doesn't work. And I said, well, you can just talk to them on your phone. You don't have to go in person. And she was like, no, 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 that's not what I do. I go and see doctors. And so I'm very like, those are pieces that it's always going to be a learning curve around something. And so, no matter how much funding we have now, and people are going to assume that we solve this crisis, we will solve some piece of it, but there will always be a need to continue training around technology of some sort. Um, and I think for any library, again, I said it in the beginning, but it's a luxury for us to have trainers on staff, and even my trainers need to continue to update their skills. So for any library who's using someone who isn't necessarily focused on training, who works at the desk the rest of their time, or who is using volunteers or AmeriCorps volunteers. Um, Northstar really gives that opportunity, especially now that it has curriculum built in, to have some consistency between who's training, and some consistency between what your customers are learning. They've created the curriculum for you at this point. And you don't have to worry if you have a volunteer who's been there for 10 weeks and then suddenly they can't come anymore and you have someone new. You can give them that same material, and have some confidence that there is a consistent message and consistent learning coming from your organization.
I like that. That was really one of the things that we had in mind, I think, when we applied for the, well, Don could speak to this, when Don applied for the ARPA funds for North
Mm-hmm.
Star statewide. And it is ARPA through IMLS, through the state library that is paying for this. Oakland is just kind of helping get it up and going with all
Mm-hmm.
y'all. But anyway, so when that happened, I think one of the key reasons for it happening was an idea that we would become more consistent and we would have
Mm-hmm.
something for staff who may come and go to rely on. And it's something that someone else updates that you can rely on, that you don't have to be the one who's constantly updating the curriculum moving forward. So I do have another question. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Marlene. Have your customers shared any particular kinds of companies that they sent their certificates to? We have not had patrons ask for certificates to my knowledge. So you talked a little bit about the industries who had recognized it. Can you tell us a little more?
So we know locally that Orlando Bakery, which is a big bakery on the east side, had been doing a lot of work on getting their drivers, people who wanted to move from kind of manufacturing floor to driving, more digitally literate. And that was a group that we saw specifically. That one stands out to me because they'd actually connected with our county government here in Cuyahoga County before sending some people to our classes. So that was one. But Marlene, I think you touched on something that I think is a huge value for us in the state, that Oakland's taking this on and putting this in place statewide, because we need more companies to recognize that this is an assessment of learning, that customers, that their staff can go through training in our libraries and come out. And I'm taking great care here to say assessment rather than certification, because a lot of the companies we see locally want to know that their employees are certified, and certified is something like Microsoft Office certification, and it's really much more extensive and not necessary for a lot of staff in a lot of capacities. And so the more recognition that there is out there among companies that Northstar is available and that it shows proficiency, I think the better situations will be in, and our customers across the board in the state will be in, where they really can show that they've learned something. I once taught a certification course long ago when I was at Tri-C, and the city of Cleveland was funding it, and they kept talking about these $50,000 an hour jobs, IT jobs that were going to be created from it. It was IC3 certification, if anybody's familiar, and if you're not, it's because pretty much nobody is. But our biggest success story was a woman who went through the training, and she was wonderful, and she got certified in IC3, and she went back to Dillard's and got a raise. She worked at a perfume counter and she got a raise. And that is in no way to minimize the work that she's doing, but to show that those are the kind of jobs, any job, proficiency in Office in particular, but in basic computer and email, any job that can help someone get a leg up in what they're doing and, really get recognized. And so the more that we can get Northstar recognized in the state too with employees, the better it is for our customers at all levels.
Thanks, Marlene. That was a great question. Mm-hmm. We've got plenty of time for other questions if anybody wants to pop in, and I've going to change my screen so I can see everybody who has an active camera. Okay. Oh, here's another good one. Thanks, John. Are there any plans to have Northstar online certificates be able to be added into to LinkedIn Learning profiles in the future? And I don't know of any. And okay, Becky, you're shaking your head, but that is a great question, awesome. John. That I will share with one of the things that we do is we have monthly meetings with the Northstar folks and with library folks throughout the country who are trying to do statewide implementations as well. And we make suggestions for development and linkages, and I will certainly take this and add that to the list of things we're asking about. And Don is getting on here, and I can't quite hear you.
Oh, can I speak to that? Can you hear me better? Okay. I actually think that will never happen, John, for a couple reasons. One, because LinkedIn Learning is the Microsoft company. It is sort of part of that, as well as the nature of the public library, the LinkedIn Learning for Libraries product, which is that those profiles aren't really publicly accessible. What people have inside their Northstar is tied only to a library card number and is not transferable to the individual user's LinkedIn account. Now, I could see LinkedIn Learning possibly developing something that would actually be an assessment that would be visible, like as a certification within an individual's LinkedIn Learning account. But again, that goes back to the public library access to that, which doesn't tie to the LinkedIn Learning accounts. You might remember a couple years ago when they were transitioning to the product, they actually were going to force library users to have LinkedIn Learning accounts for that. And while that would have been great for a number of them, that really does run up against the library privacy principles. And so I don't see that ever happening with Northstar.
John, from my standpoint, though, I'd love it. Just because as we talk, and I know not everyone's working as closely with their local workforce divisions, but as we talk about workforce in our Aspire program and things like stackable credentials, Northstar has been a really positive way for us to work with our HSE students and our ESL students to just give them some easy wins initially around technology before we try to tackle something a little bit more challenging. And I would love for them to be able to get credit basically with, within ODE, within the state, with in some way for Northstar to be recognized, because it definitely is a positive part of our educational journey with students, because they do pick it up and they do understand. And I would love, for them to be able to get credit for their certifications or their assessments there as a part of a step towards that next thing that they're doing.
Thanks for the question, John. And I think that does speak to the kind of the larger question of, and then what? You have the certificate, and then what? But Becky, that is a great answer. It is a starting point for high school equivalency folks, for ESL folks, for other folks who are beginning their journey. And it's definitely a confidence builder, a point of, hey, I did this. Let's see what else I can do. So that was a great question. Thanks, John. We've got, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say, if anyone else is doing more advanced training, we do offer a Microsoft Office certification in Word class for both the public and for our Aspire, for a couple of our Aspire cohorts. And Northstar's basic Word assessment has been a fantastic predictor of whether or not someone is in a place to start more advanced training. So we actually do it. We make everybody go through the test and pass before they take part in those programs. But it's put us in a really good position to train anybody at a more advanced level too. So it's a great predictor.
That's a great point. I had thought of it as a starting point, but I had never thought of it as a predictor. So that's a really great point. We've got some time for some more questions, folks. If you have them, you can pop up in chat or turn on your camera and wave at us. We're glad to take any of those questions. I'm going to give it a minute. Becky, I thank you for agreeing to do this, and I do wonder if folks might think of things later. Can I pass those on to you for?
You can.
Okay, and I think folks who are attending have probably seen the very robust FAQ that we have developed for Northstar in Ohio Public Libraries, and certainly I'm keeping track of all that. Okay, okay. Is my audio okay? I just had a little blip on my.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. One more good question came up here. How did you promote it when you first started?
That's a great question, Sarah. So I mentioned early on that we've had a training program in place for a long time, and that helped us some here because we were already training, and we had, we do a much beloved guide to training that goes out quarterly, that gets snapped up. It's still an actual print piece that we do. We also do quite a bit of promotion on social and through our email list, which is enormous. However, not everyone who attends training, and especially basic training, are connected to us in any of those ways other than the paper way. So the biggest piece was, we did a roadshow with our staff. We have a connection or a contact at each branch where we teach, and we shared with them. We also went out and shared with any staff, our adult staff at our branches who are interested. We've long had a group of interested staff members. We were also doing staff training at the time, so we mentioned it anywhere and everywhere that we could. And I mean, most importantly, I think you guys probably all know in the library realm, you cannot underestimate the power of kind of hand selling it to customers. And so our staff in locations where we regularly had customers take technology training, and my trainers mentioned it in every class that they offered, that this was coming, that they were going to be able to get, to take an assessment and show what they'd learned. We just talked it up. And the fact that we had, some time from the time that we purchased it to when we went live really gave us an opportunity to kind of talk up the fact that we were changing the way that our classes worked, but what that was going to mean for customers too. So we just took the time and built the audience. The one thing I'm sad about that I haven't mentioned here is that we're not offering assessments right now because we're just starting to get back to in-person training. But we are on our way back to being able to offer them again since our great COVID disruption.
That has been particularly tough. I know a number of libraries have been on the path of going back and then, oh no, we're not going back. And then, maybe we're going back again. And it's been a hard time to try to do this. And I know that it's been tough. But I also know that we are seeing the reasons and the need for this work, and I appreciate everything that everyone is doing towards that end. All right, so how does proctoring work at your library, Becky?
Yeah, so I know that Northstar has made a couple changes in this prior to. So, Marlene, we do offer at the end of each class that has a Northstar assessment attached to it, we offer proctored a proctored session. Now, the other piece that our customers have come to understand is that if they didn't pass, say, email, and they're in a internet class, they can ask at the end of that class and after everybody else is tested to take an assessment that they didn't pass previously and try to pass it this time. So that's something we've made available. And again, guys, we are my gosh, we're 4 years in on this. So our staff, even though we took a little break in the middle, our staff have kind of gotten used to what to tell customers. And we do regularly update staff on, any changes we've made and send out training updates to them. So all of my staff are proctors. Prior to COVID, they had to go around and actually put in their proctor credentials on each machine. And that has been part of why we have not picked this back up. That is not the case anymore, though. I know that they can kind of just push a button in a lab and get everybody on every computer. My apologies for not having the process exactly there. I think that I made it sound a lot simpler than it is. But there is a way to kind of batch do that now so that you don't have to get right up next to somebody to proctor those tests. And then we don't schedule, but that's just because really at the end of any of our classes, even if it isn't a Northstar assessment class, someone can always ask and our instructor will stay after and proctor a test with them. Again, we're not, the only thing we're teaching in person and just in a couple of locations right now is our basics classes because we wanted to get those back out there and because they're not conducive to virtual classes necessarily. But we are kind of re-implementing Northstar and we just try to be as flexible as we can with customers.
Thanks, Becky, and thanks for those good questions, Marlene. I think, Becky, you did say that there's a way to do group proctoring, and we did cover that in our training, but I will be honest, I need to go back and dig that up. But that is one of those really juicy questions that I think will probably end up on our FAQ, Marlene, so thanks for asking it today. Look for that to be coming very soon. got a few more minutes if anybody has any other questions.
Nice to see you, not see you too, Marlene. We went to library school together, so we go way back.
It's a small world.
Oh, it is.
Well, this has been lovely. Oh, Martin, there we go.
There we go.
Great reason to turn on the camera. Oh,
it is.
Can't hear you, Marlene.
Unmute.
I've got this striped shirt on, so I thought maybe I better not.
Marlene, I'm covering up my striped turtleneck so that I don't blind everybody. I did not follow any broadcasting rules today either, but you can't see it as much around the jacket. So,
Thanks.
I'm grateful that everybody came today to hear, and I'm happy questions as they come. Keep in mind, I run a whole programming division now, so if there's a little bit of lag in my answer, it's only because I'm drowning in some other programming thing. But I clearly love to talk about this because I have for almost 50 minutes straight here. So please reach out if you have any questions. But it's been a lot of fun to talk to you today.
Well, we've been really glad to have that opportunity to hear from you, listen to you, and learn from you and learn from each other. It looks like folks are kind of getting offline here. Again, this recording is going to be available on our YouTube link, and there should be a survey coming out to folks who have attended, but I'm going to pop this into the chat. Basically, just some feedback for me to see how this concept has worked, if there's any tweaking that we need to do as we move forward with future Northstar pointer sessions. Becky, thank you so much for being our first. We really appreciate it. You've got a wealth of information and experience, and I really especially love the experience that you had at Cuyahoga County Community College and how that has played into what you're doing at the library at CCPL now. It's been really interesting to hear that journey and hear what CCPL is doing in terms of training because of that.
Thank you.
Well, I think I'm going to end the recording here. Thank you again for attending, and hope to see you at the upcoming sessions. There's still lots of room for everybody. Have a great day.
Bye. Take care, everybody.